there you are. So good to see you, Global Book Network. And welcome into the studio. You got Josh Carey right here. It's your Global Book Network, GBN. A question for you. What if we can measure the impact of someone's life, not just by their success, but how they shifted the world around them? I had the good fortune of chatting with our guest for a real good while before we went on air today. And there is a lot here. We're going to be joined by Tracy Emerick, who, among other things, is not only the author of 4 books in one series, but what we're going to be focusing on today is his book called Extreme Entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs and Jesus Christ. That's right. That's what I said. Steve Jobs and Jesus Christ. It's rare you hear those two names together, and they're put side by side for a very specific reason. Let's bring Tracy right into the program, welcome him in, and see what all this is about. Tracy, so good to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
The book, Extreme Entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs and Jesus Christ, like I said, rarely those two names. You're a marketer.
Right.
We're going to get into that. You spent your whole entire career in digital marketing, in direct marketing, in B2B marketing, in all of that. We're going to unpack that. But talk to me about the specificity, the deliberate nature of putting Steve Jobs and Jesus Christ under the subhead of Extreme Entrepreneurs.
Well, it came out of a Bible study. And we're talking about what Jesus did. And I'm thinking in my business terms. Now, my background's business is, he was an entrepreneur. He brought an idea to the market that was already there. He didn't invent it, but he repositioned it from his. At that time, in that era, fear was the primary motivator. You were afraid something's going to happen to you. The churches are going to kick you out. The Romans are going to crucify you. A lot of problems. So he came along and said, forget the fear stuff. Think about love. And he wouldn't talk about fear anymore. So that was very entrepreneurial. And I started thinking about it. I thought, maybe we've got to get the word out differently than we have in the past. Because if I got up on Sunday morning and gave a sermon about this topic, about Jesus being an entrepreneur, a few people here like, ho-hum, who cares? And I decided that why don't I compare and contrast a real entrepreneur, an extreme entrepreneur, and Jesus Christ. And so I started down the path of what makes an extreme entrepreneur. And what makes an extreme entrepreneur is somebody that has the vision that nobody else has. Steve Jobs didn't invent anything. He combined things and ended up with a GUI interface, graphic user interface on the computer. He gave computers to you and me to use. Up until that point, I couldn't write code. I didn't want to write code. But he kind of changed the whole relationship between man and machine. So he changed the world. Look at the billions of users that they have right now. The same thing with Jesus. He changed the world. There's, like 1.3 billion Christians, I'm told. I haven't counted them. But both of those were extreme positions that were tough to stick with. Because I'm sure everybody told Steve Jobs what wouldn't work. And that's why he didn't pay attention to people. And we know everybody told Jesus, stop it, you're going to get killed. And he was enough of a radical to say, no, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going with my message. So in both cases, we have the extreme of entrepreneurs. And there's not that many. You can probably name them on one hand. We think of Walt Disney as being one that changed the whole destination entertainment industry. Now we're talking about, I just lost his name. The Tesla.
Elon Musk.
He sees things nobody else sees. So that's the extreme entrepreneurship, that man has. And I think you get it because we all have God within us, but we don't recognize it. we try to suppress it. And what we try to do is we try to become something, but we don't fix ourselves very often. We have one pattern and we do it for our whole life. But what we really need to do is look at not what we do, but who we are. And we don't reflect that way very often.
So what do we look to do to learn when we're reading this book? If I'm thumbing through this, am I looking to get closer to that extreme place?
Well, you're looking to understand that your ideas can be inspirations. They don't have to be cosmic. They can be small inspirations to say, your soul's going to tell you these things. We've all known, I call it pushing a rope up a hill a long way. We've all tried to push the rope and we fail. Our body is telling us, our soul is telling us, don't do that. It isn't going to work, but we don't pay attention. And so we fail. And so that our entrepreneur spirit goes, I got to stick with what I got. But then something starts to weld up in you again, and you get another idea. You got to stop suppressing those ideas. I mean, you've said that yourself. If you've got something you think is going to be a winner, go with it. But you have to have confidence in yourself, and you have to believe that you're going to tell yourself the right thing to do. You can't listen to the world, because the world is not your friend. It's going to tell you all the reasons you're going to fail. So that's part of entrepreneuring, is in your own life. I mean, you can be an entrepreneur at the bridge club. You can be an entrepreneur in the baseball team. You can be an entrepreneur at your business. You can be an entrepreneur at your church. I mean, entrepreneuring is not like I do one thing. I'm sure Steve Jobs had lots of ideas that he would have liked to pursue other than what he did pursue, but he finally figured out that this was going to work best for him. So it's, if you're going to be extreme, you and like we talked before we went on air, is he didn't do it for money. He never worried about the money. He did it because he wanted to change man's ability to use technology, and he did it.
Your book, Extreme Entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs and Jesus Christ, is actually the first in a series of now 4. First, why the additional 3? And then frame the reference to the Wizard of Oz between the 4 books.
Okay, well, when I was working with the publisher on the first book, the publisher contacts, do you have any more in there? And I said, well, yeah, I think I do. And so that's where the other 3 titles came from.
Best compliment, by the way, right? Now you're validated.
Right, exactly. So once you have the pattern of one, it's easier to do the next ones, because you've kind of argued with yourself about what you need to cover and what guardrails to set for yourself. So moving through the other books went fairly quickly. Plus, when you have a good editor, it makes a big difference. That was my biggest mistake in the first book. I didn't have that good editor. But the other books kind of followed on. And as it turned out, like I mentioned to you, accidentally, I was looking up some trivia about the Wizard of Oz. And it hit me all of a sudden that my 4 books are the Wizard of Oz movie. Like the Tin Man wanted a heart. And one of my books is called Nifty Neighbors, Mr. Rogers and Jesus Christ. And that's about your heart, and that's about other people and getting along with people. Then the other character with the lion was looking for courage. And so I have a book called Constant Courage, Martin Luther King Jr. and Jesus Christ. Then the last primary character was the Scarecrow. Now, the Scarecrow was looking for a brain. And that's my Steve Jobs book. But then I was thinking, well, who the hell is the coach? Because my last book was called Consummate Coaches, Bill Belichick and Jesus Christ. And I figured out, well, who's the coach? So I started envisioning the movie, and it came out that the good witch, Belinda, or Galinda, her name is, was the one that told Dorothy to follow the yellow brick road. And then at the end, she was the one that said, your ruby slippers could have always been there to take you home. So she was the coach. So my 4 books perfectly tied to the Wizard of Oz. I don't have the Wizard, by the way. Maybe that's the next book. I don't know.
My goodness. I love the connection, not only to the Wizard of Oz, but I love how they're all together. So these are all extreme entrepreneurs, somebody, and Jesus Christ. That's the
Correct.
template. I mean, it's really clever, right? Especially as an author, it must be very gratifying.
It is. It is. And it's interesting. I get the most pushback from people about Jesus Christ and Steve Jobs.
What is that? What do you mean the most pushback?
Well, because Steve, he doesn't have any aura of religiosity at all. And in fact, he didn't believe. He said he didn't believe in God, but that's what we won't debate that one. But he's the most antithesis, if you will, of Jesus Christ of the characters. So I've had interesting emails from people that say, or some of the reviewers. One of the reviewers said, I never thought I'd see these two people combined in the same sentence.
And you're thinking, win.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. And that's exactly what I want to have happen. Because if you get into the book, then you can start to identify with yourself as not being necessarily Steve Jobs, but you've got this, we all have the same qualities of thought. I mean, you can think about ideas, little ideas, big ideas, but the key is doing them.
You spent your entire life, right? Your career in marketing, direct marketing, digital marketing, B2B sales.
Yep.
Give us an idea of what that really looked like. Paint the picture, and then we'll go from there. What did you do?
Well, back in the day, we used to refer to it as junk mail.
Junk mail, and this was before the internet.
Yeah, way before. This is back in the 70s, early 80s.
When mail was it, right?
Well, and telephones started to come online. That was when we started to have junk telephone. So through the 80s, those two, that was the hand in glove of activity in the direct marketing industry.
Okay, junk mail. I love it.
Yeah. So I did a lot of junk mail. And these books were not even at that time. I wrote a book back in '86 called Business to Business Direct Marketing, which was basically the how-to book of doing direct marketing to businesses. And I updated that in 1999. But then since then, there's so many people in it now. It's kind of a crowded industry. Back when you were the lone voice on the top of the hill, but now there's a whole crowd of people. So it's like, I gotta go find something else to do. No point in trying to yell louder than everybody else. I need a different approach. Well, I'm retired now, so I don't need to do that.
When you were getting your feet wet in marketing and learning and succeeding, looking back on all that, what do you think one of the biggest and best lessons you've learned about people and marketing and sales?
Oh, I guess one of the things I learned, it came to fruition when I started doing just consulting. And rather than doing the work, I went to help other people figure out how they could do the work. And it was a disappointment that people would pay me a ton of money to work with their staff for like a day or 2 days or 3 days and come up with a whole plan and a whole implementation schedule, blah, 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 blah. You go back 6 months later, they haven't done a thing. And you say to them, I'm happy to come and spend a couple more days with you. Now, you're going to give me a whole bunch of money. But if you're not going to do anything, what am I here for? And so I think that was my biggest aha, was that even though people act like they're trying to do things, nobody wants to change. And I guess that's the essence of my issue is they say they want to do something different because what they're doing isn't working anymore. And then if you give them something to say, okay, try this to see if this works better, they're resistant. And they fight it. And, it's almost like I'd rather go down with the ship than fix it. And it's like, okay, well, I obviously am going to have to pick my clients because it's too frustrating. I'm almost embarrassed invoicing people to go and say, you didn't do any of it, or you did 1% of it. Or, it was very frustrating. So I think people coping with change is probably the essence based on the question you asked. That was my biggest revelation.
Well, it seems like nothing's changed, right? We're all the same humans as we were
That's
whenever
right.
that, yeah.
No,
Nobody
no,
wants to change. Even, and they sometimes say what people pay for, they value more and skin in the game, but it sounds like you were still getting your fee and they still weren't changing. So there
that's
goes
right.
that theory.
Right. That's how it happened. Plus, just to be, this is not a sexist comment, but what happened in the 90s, where there was a lot of downsizing and resizing and restructuring, the marketing departments disappeared. And the underling, man or woman, whoever it was, primarily were women that were the second in command or the underlings of the marketing directors or VPs of marketing. The VPs disappeared, directors disappeared, and so now here we have what I referred to at the time as chickie babies. We had women who were they were bright and they were capable, but they'd only learned what their boss taught them. They hadn't been out and weathered a storm by themselves, so they could only do what the boss who left did. And if you go in and you say it didn't work for the boss, you got to do something different than the boss did. They couldn't do it. And they wouldn't sign off because they didn't want to step out and take a chance. So it's like that was an interesting era. That's when I moved from actual agency work into consulting and training, because I saw the void of people understanding the full cycle of direct marketing. It's complicated, and so trying to plop in an idea on somebody that really doesn't understand how it fits in the scheme of things, it was a waste of time. So that's why I transitioned over more into the technology, to the consulting and training side.
Whether it's direct marketing or any other kind of marketing, what are some of those elements that were relevant then and still are? Meaning you need a great offer,
Yes.
you need a call to action. What am I missing?
Well, people have to understand what they're going to get if they raise their hand. You got to tell them, if you raise your hand, I'm going to do this for you. It's not what you're going to do for me, even though that's what the sales process is all about. A good sales presentation says, here's what you're going to benefit out of our relationship. They have to understand that. And so if you're asking me to raise my hand and spend some time with me, you have to give me a reason why it's worth my time. And that's the offer. That's the call to action. But most of the time, people think marketing is printing up a flyer and mailing it to somebody. Like, whoopee, I've waited my whole life for this, whatever it is. It doesn't happen that way. You have to have a proposition that has an orientation that's going to solve a problem for the recipient.
And you gotta sort of lead with that. Or
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what you're selling. Your sales call, if you're doing it on the phone, on the internet, by mail, your sales call is you're leading with their benefit. They don't care how big you are. They don't care how many people you have. They don't give a squat about you. All they care about is themselves. Self-interest is a great motivator. So if you can hand them something that solves a problem of self-interest, now you're talking turkey.
were you always destined for this sales and marketing position growing
No,
up?
when I got my MBA, I thought I wanted to be in finance, but then I went to work and kind of got interested. I went to work for a manufacturing company and got interested in product development and sales. And I ended up doing program management with American Express mail order division. And so that kind of got my juices going as far as this whole mail order direct marketing industry thing. So from then on, that was the path I followed after that. Me and manufacturing were good friends for about 3 years. And then I figured out I don't want to do that. So it was more like figuring out what you didn't want to do and eliminating those things to figure out what you liked. And I like direct marketing.
My brand, The Hidden Entrepreneur, is based on the idea that I spent most of my life hiding behind fear, showing up less than I knew I was capable of doing. Was
Right.
there ever a time or a position in your life where you could relate to that?
Right now, because I'm interested in getting in the podcast. I'll call it industry. I don't know what it is.
It's an industry.
Industry, and I'm walking with baby steps. But it's kind of like you got to figure it all out as you start. So I'm at that point again. I think the first time I really felt that way was when I went out on my own, and you hang up your own shingle, and it's like, okay, here I am, world. Come see how smart I am. That was the first time. It was when I left an agency and went out and started my own agency. Then in the early 90s, I had a client that was a technology company, and I saw the internet, and I said, that's the future of marketing. And I bought a big computer, not knowing you could do it on a PC. But then that was another fearful time. And I actually sold that company because I realized that a marketer has no business running a technology company. I mean, I had people talking to me. I didn't know what they were saying. And so I figured if I can't help them and manage and help them succeed, what am I doing? I can't be a leader. So I sold the business to a technology person. So, and now here I am again. I retired, happy, go lucky, and wrote these books. And then I started doing interviews on this podcast thing. And I thought, well, let's give it a try. So now I'm in no man's land again, kind of, what do I do next? What do I do next? Hey, somebody, throw me a bone over here, a piece of information that's, you share some things with me. So that's where I'm there again.
Yeah.
At 77, who wanted to be here at 77? But I don't know.
Wow. So I love that. So working backwards, today you're 77, you're doing your thing in a few different arenas, but now you realize recently you're like, oh, I might want to be my own host and create a show. I got things to say. I'm interested in this. But like anybody who's entering something new, you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
You don't know all the steps. So you have to figure it out.
Right.
And I think that is such a barrier for so many people at so many points in their life.
Right. You're right. That it's change. I mean, my kitchen is now my studio, and that's the blessing. I look at this as a blessing because I never want to get on an airplane again. I've flown on so many airplanes and stayed at so many hotels. If I never get on an airplane again, it'll be fine. And once I saw this industry, and I said, now I can do this from my kitchen counter. Oh man, I'm loving this because this is virtually my kitchen counter, and I don't have to get on an airplane. I don't have to stay in a hotel, and the sky's the limit. I mean, you can go anywhere you want to and talk to whoever you want to, and we'll see what happens.
That's amazing. When you left the comfort of that agency some time ago to go out on your own,
Yeah.
what was the feeling there?
The feeling there was I thought I could do it better. I mean, I guess that's everybody that wants to go out and be an entrepreneur has some sense that I know what the rules are and the regulations, but I think I got a different slant, and I can do a little better than somebody else. And sometimes you succeed. I mean, you actually do it better than somebody else. Sometimes you don't. I mean, some industries I didn't click, and other industries I did quite well.
How did you know if you were going to get your first or next client?
Well, I had a very good friend who also was a grubstake in the business that owned one of the largest direct mail houses in the Northeast. And he had a client base that was like, 5-star. And he was willing to introduce me to the senior people, like the owners and the presidents of the companies that he was working with. So I had a leg up, if you will, by having a relationship with him. And it worked very synergistically that we helped each other for, maybe 12, 15 years, where I would hand him a bunch of work and he'd give me a referral, and it kind of works. I mean,
Yeah.
in any business, you've got to know somebody. I mean, it's not magic. It's referrals. It's friends of friends. A referral is the best form of business acquisition, I mean, bar none. So that was really, I had a confidence in this guy, and he was about 15 years older than me, so he was also kind of a mentor.
Wow. Tracy Emerick, author of Extreme Entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs, and Jesus Christ. Check it out, available right now, along with the other books in this series. Tracy, it sounds like you are just getting started on the next chapter of your life here. I love everything about you, everything you stand for. I love your knowledge and your stories. I hope we can do this again. I look forward to watching everything you develop going forward. Thank you for joining in today.
Well, thank you for having me.
And thank you, GBN, for tuning in, investing your time. Did I tell you? It's absolutely amazing. Follow Tracy Emerick. Follow everything he does. Check out Extreme Entrepreneurs right now, wherever you get your books. We're going to do this again before too long. Thanks again for tuning in. Until we meet again, take care. Be well.